Guys, do you ever just wish you had a falsetto as good as Frank Ocean's? He's... Thanks. There was like a car driving past my fucking house. Yeah. Because that's where I'm at right now emotionally. Also, I keep eating these, mouth drops, or whatever. Because my throat is kind of hurting. Also, I fell off my chair today. On my palm, on my left palm. Which I'm already, like, my left palm, I've talked about, like, just the fact that I had issues with it, right? Not so much recently. Recently it's been pretty okay. And right now it's pretty okay. But it's still scary when you, like, just have a dumb accident and you're like, fuck. And, like, it hurts a lot in the moment and you're like, oh my god, did I fuck it up again? I actually did feel some numbness in my hand earlier. But, like, right now I'm fine. There's only, like, mild discomfort, maybe. Yeah. But that was stupid. That was stupid that happened. Maybe I should just close the window. Actually, I won't, no. Today, I want to talk about aesthetics in video games. Because, like, it's a topic that's been coming up a lot, sort of in my bubble lately. The main instigator was the reveal of Final Fantasy XIV. I'm gonna talk more about, like, next-gen shit in another video that I'm gonna record after this one. But yeah, the thing about Final Fantasy XVI is that it was revealed, and a lot of people were displeased with the art direction and sort of just the vibe of the game. There was a lot of, criticisms levied against it because it's like, oh, it's generic fucking Game of Thrones, medieval fantasy. Barely even looks like a mainline Final Fantasy game. Doesn't like have the expensive feel of those games, right? And yeah, that kicked off like a lot of discussions in my bubble, like I said, where I don't know, just like this feeling of disappointment that people had with it really overwhelmed the whole discussion, right? And with the visuals specifically, right? And for me, it was kind of weird because I didn't really have that reaction, right? I didn't think it looked ugly, right, at all. I do think the art direction right now, it does look a little bit drab. Just in terms of the color palette, I didn't really see a lot of sort of unique, like when we see the world, I like seeing sort of just unique places and locations and I don't know, individual like pieces of geometry that kind of stand out. That was definitely lacking. Like right now, it looked very uniform. Yeah. Nothing really stood out visually. And it's also worth saying, yeah, like technically it was not like, it didn't really blow the door open, I guess. It's very much the Final Fantasy XIV engine, you know, like the way the characters kind of look is very similar. And that's why, I mean, the rumors, for Final Fantasy XVI that was going to be developed by the 14 team and all the stuff, and that would be revealed at that event, were very persistent, and that's why when I saw those faces, I immediately thought, okay, it's 16. And for me, as someone, and here's what I'm going to get to the point a little bit, 4 minutes in, we're already getting to the point. Wow. As someone who hasn't even played 14 very much, I did fuck with it a little bit, but didn't really grab me, didn't like the combat. Plus this MMO. I'm not really an MMO guy. Even though, like, that's the thing, it makes me sad because, like, everyone always says, like, the story is so fucking good, and, like, I really liked just the world and like the way, like the game had this cozy feel to it that I really enjoyed, and that's why I kind of wanted to keep. That's why I wanted to get kind of stuck into it, but that never really happened for me. And so I'm hoping I'm gonna get that vibe from this game, maybe, or like just like all the shit that Final Fantasy XIV is kind of known for and like famous for and beloved for. I hope I'm gonna get that from 16. And yeah, just like looking at it more generally, it's the fact that we know that the 14 team is that they're super organized. Just the way they work is very solid. Their work is very acclaimed, both critically and commercially. And seeing a Final Fantasy game. See, now I'm realizing I'm just talking about the game generally, which I didn't really plan to, but like, yeah, fuck it. Seeing a Final Fantasy game, like the first trailer for a new mainline Final Fantasy. That is actually a legit trailer, you know, where they show a substantial amount of gameplay, they show the concept of the game, they show the world, they show kind of what's unique about it, they show the tone. I think generally that fills me with a lot of fucking confidence, because none of those things were really true for any Final Fantasy showing. Like, since maybe Final Fantasy IX. Like, I remember the first thing you saw from 10 was like kind of a shitty, not representative demo of Tidus just running around a map, right? And that wasn't even like, that's the thing, it wasn't even representative of what most of that game kind of was like, you know? I don't really remember 12's announcement. And then 13 and Versus 13 and all this shit is like, obviously, we all know the story by now. So all that is cool, right? I thought Final Fantasy VI, well, I guess I'm gonna talk about more generally, when I discuss the next gen shit. But like, yeah, there was like a lot of little things that I was pretty into, and like just the fact that the game was so far along already filled me with a lot of confidence, right? So I'm like, cool, that's exciting. I'm not super like pogging over it, but you know, it's pretty cool. So then going on Twitter and like just seeing people shit on it so hard based on purely the way it looked was really odd. And I feel like it just kind of showed me that, wow, okay, not everyone is looking at it with the same perspective, you know? Like, it was just hard to understand for me that this is like the first Final Fantasy game in like ever that actually that is announced and it looks like a real video game. And then people complain that it doesn't look good enough. You know? Like, do you sort of understand where I'm going with this? Like, just that people are so laser focused on aesthetics and visuals that they just do not give a fuck about anything else is really it was just so unrelatable to me, you know? And it really made me think a lot about this like conundrum, right? Like how much do aesthetics matter in games? Because that's the thing. For example, yeah, I mean, for example, I talked to my buddy Bjorn about this on Twitter as well, because he was like, for example, super disappointed with it. And he was not excited. He is not excited for the game at all, right? And I was like trying to understand it, and I mean, for example, he said that, yeah, Final Fantasy XII, for example, looks way better, even though it's a PS2 game, right? And like, thing is, I'm not even asserting that people care so much about like tech and shit, and just pure graphics, right? But I still think that's like an odd comparison, because like, like when you say that, you make it sound like good art design doesn't still take fucking like a lot of fucking time, you know, to pull off. And just that that specific talent and that, you know, just that kind of budget. Like, that's the thing. That's when people say that, I know maybe that's not what they mean, right? But it sounds like, oh, just have good art design, bro. Just have good art design. As if that also is just, like, how the fuck do I explain this? Like, we sort of have this idea in our heads that, oh, tech, there's, like, a hard limit on that. Or, like, that's, like, you need to do very specific things to, like, achieve fucking good tech in a game, right? You need to have this amount of money and this amount of time, blah, blah. And then so somehow people don't understand that the same is true for literally anything in a game. And, like, I was then hit with this idea that, oh, well, it's not like Square Enix are not this fucking gigantic company, right? They can afford it, you know? And it's like, yes, but also have you looked at their games? At their recent games? That's why I just don't... I feel like... Like, that's why I got so frustrated with all these arguments, because I feel like people don't even, like, think about what they're saying. So I just recorded an entire segment where I was kind of going on a rant about, like, how much this kind of rhetoric annoys me, right? That people make it sound really easy to do certain things. Yeah, I mean, my main point is, like, yeah, being disappointed with the visuals is one thing, but then, like, justifying it in this weird way that you're like, oh, they're a fucking giant company, like, why couldn't... It's like, it really gets me on, like, a really deep level, that kind of thing. And, that's, like, I'm not gonna fucking include the segment I just recorded because, like, I was kind of going off too much. But I do think it's, like, very deeply wrong and, like, definitely lacks perspective, right? Yeah, that's why, personally, I've always tried to have a lot of respect for developers, but, like, especially now that I'm in game development, and I've worked with artists, it just really changes your outlook on a lot of things. And this is where we're gonna get to the actual topic. Yeah, because as someone, I said, like, my appreciation for this, like, for this craft and just the work that developers put in obviously has increased even more now than it used to be. But still, I'm very much this kind of person, and I've gone on record saying this, for me, aesthetic stuff fades into the background super quickly, and it's not something that sells me on a game, generally. At least not in my very more recent memory. And yet at the same time I'm saying, yeah, I do have respect for artists and stuff. Like, it's a complicated topic, and, like, we're gonna unravel it a little bit as we go. Basically, I was, like, just thinking about this idea, it's, like, very interesting that just aesthetics really do make or break a game for a lot of people. If they can't get into the way it looks, they do not care about anything else, right? They cannot see anything else. And, as a game designer, again, specifically, that's a little bit frustrating because, I've tried to explain this on Twitter as well. For me, this mindset definitely stifles creativity. Because, you're choosing, like, yeah, so, obviously, games, as a representation of dynamic systems, that's sort of the thing that they're most unique at, and the most, interesting at, you know? That's, like, the most interesting, distinguishing feature of games. I think that's... Well, actually, I mean, what you find interesting is, like, special. It is the most unique thing about games. Let's just say that. Let's just say it like that. Obviously... See, people who expect, like, a good story from every game... they come to games specifically, I think, because the kinds of stories that are told in games are different from other mediums. And just the format of it being generally a longer experience, as well as, it's a different feeling. And that is, for example, one example that maybe the interactive part is not really the reason why you like video games, right? That's not really the main thing you come for to the medium. But still, I think we can pretty objectively say, yeah, dynamic or representation of dynamic systems, that is the key thing of video games, right? That is like the most unique distinguishing feature. So as someone who cares about that, and who cares about innovation in the medium, and like progress, and new ideas, it frustrates me a lot that a trailer can either have a new idea or not have a new idea. In terms of like just interaction, right? But like most people will not see it. Most people will just see the visuals. And that's the main thing they're talking about. And that's why it's just so frustrating to have like, I don't know, an 8-minute video on Final Fantasy XVI, and for 6 minutes they talk about the visuals, and not anything else. That's the kind of perspective that I'm coming at this issue from, right? Just to establish that. Now, you might wonder, does that mean that for me, for you as the ad basically, does that mean that for me, like, do aesthetics just not matter at all? And that is just such a complicated, loaded question. I'm gonna take another one of these drops because my throat is killing me. My other good buddy, Daniel, on Twitter, Shintai Reviews, does YouTube videos on anime and games. You should check them out. He posed this conundrum of like a game that's not kinesthetically satisfying. And I'm specifically saying aesthetics in this video, right? Obviously, I was talking a lot about visuals specifically, but aesthetics is like, animations, feel, can be music, can be a lot of things, right? If the game is like, so he was posing, like I said, this conundrum that if the game is like super fucking deep, has super deep combat, and let's say, he wasn't saying it like that specifically, but let's say like the combat system is really well designed, makes you make interesting choices, it's very fair, creates interesting situations, blah blah blah. But like, it feels like DMC2. It looks and feels to play like DMC2, right? He asserted that probably would still not be a fun game. And conversely, a game that's like kind of shallow, but is really kinesthetically satisfying, probably is gonna get by better, right? It's probably gonna satisfy more people. And you know what? That's probably true. But also, and that's what I said to him, like, this idea of a game that feels to play like DMC2, but it's like as well designed and as deep as DMC4, right? Would I enjoy that game? I don't know, because that game doesn't exist, right? That's what makes it so difficult. That scenario is so hypothetical that it's very difficult to like have a concrete answer to it. But I'm leaning toward no. I'm leaning toward, yeah, I probably wouldn't like that game. Because it is a fact that video games are a visual and like, kinesthetic medium, right? You definitely cannot deny that. I was thinking about it again with anime today, actually. Because, like, with anime, I care a lot about, like, directing and good visuals. Yeah. I care a lot of... Oh, God. On God, my mom just called me asking if she should get McDonald's. So, I was thinking about it again with anime. I care a lot about visuals and, like, directing and, like, things having punch and impact. There's a lot of shows that I dropped because the directing and... yeah, let's say the directing fell flat, right? Fell very flat. I was thinking, yeah, I mean, the show that made me think about this was Kokoku. I think also called Flashback, I'm not sure. Has, like, the sickest fucking opening of all time. And I was like, fuck, if the show has, like, that entire vibe, it's gonna be awesome. And then the show was, like, just the way it was presented was so dry. Seeing, like, there's a lot of other problems with that show, right? There was a lot of internal monologuing, a lot of exposition, a lot of just very awkward delivery of things, or delivery of information, very bad pacing, and all of those things are kind of tied together, but, like, also on top of that is, like, it just looked super bland, and, like, it did not have energy to it at all. And I'm like, like, does that one anime exist that looks really ugly, but that I still like? I'm not sure. I can't think of one. And with games, like, especially, see, if you have, like, a puzzle game or something, a Space Chem is, like, one thing that, like, is often brought up, right? Like, it's a super fucking deep problem-solving game, really interesting. But just the front end of it feels very cheap. It was very clearly one of their earliest sort of commercial games. Zachtronics, that's the name of the studio. It was like the first proper commercial game. They had a bunch of Flash games before that, but yeah. And you could tell. But still, it manages to overcome that just through its depth and through how interesting the gameplay is. And I'm, like, thinking, in an action game, that's very hard. See, yeah, one example that I thought of was Travis Strikes Again. Because that game actually has a little bit more going on than the other No More Heroes games. But obviously, it looks and feels way more limp than, like, No More Heroes 1, right? And honestly, well, that's the thing. I find both games kind of equally repetitive after a while. But it's also, the thing is, it's worth saying, it's not like Travis Strikes Again is that much deeper than No More Heroes. So I find both games kind of equally repetitive after a while. But, like, I do know that playing No More Heroes for the first time definitely gave me a way bigger kick, right? And definitely it took a while before that wore off. That excitement. And every time I do play it again, I get that again, that feeling. Whereas with Travis Strikes Again, that's a lot harder. So, it's really hard to find good examples for what we're talking about, right? It's really hard to find this example of an action game that's, like, not kinesthetically satisfying at all. And it's still, like, a 10 out of 10. You know? Yeah, like, the Yakuza series is also a good showcase because, like, obviously they ramped up the complexity a little bit over time, but, like, they lost a lot of the kinesthetic appeal, I feel, from the PS2 titles. I still think Yakuza 1 and 2 feel kinesthetically the best. Just, like, those games have a viscerality and a grit to them that definitely was lost from 3 onward. 3 looks like a cartoon, and all the other games after that look like cartoons. Well, actually, 6, the fucking Dragon Engine shit, also is kind of a different direction now. But still, I do prefer the PS2 games in terms of the feel. And like the newer games are, yes, there's a little bit more going on, but not so much that it actually outweighs what they lost in kinesthetics, right? It's just really hard. It's like, it's really hard to find that like exact sort of template that like, okay, this is the rule, this is how deep an action game needs to be, and this is how good it needs to feel. Oh yeah, other great example. Today we had the fucking gameplay reveal for the NieR remaster, and made me think a lot about NieR Automata. And that game, that's the thing, that game has great animations, looks very polished and stuff. But just mechanically and design-wise, it's kind of horrible. It's kind of not very good at all. Yeah, actually, that's a perfect example, because like combat design-wise, it's really bad, but it's, you know, pretty polished, and like on first blush it seems really cool. Whereas in the original NieR, yeah, it's not polished at all, it feels kind of jank, and not very impressive, right, when you just lay your hands on it. But then, you know, just the actual combat design is like pretty inoffensive, right? It doesn't make you want to fucking rip your own balls off like Automata does in a lot of places. So that's why original NieR ends up being a way more pleasant experience in the end. So that's also an interesting example. I feel like I'm still not really getting to the root of what I'm trying to talk about. So let's talk about God Hand. God Hand is another game that came up when we talked about this again a little bit on stream last night. Because I think personally, God Hand, definitely like kind of an ugly game. It's not like actively unappealing, right? So here's the thing, right? I don't think God Hand has great art design, but I'm also personally in that place where I don't really care that much, right? I don't look at it and am disgusted and feel disgusted, you know? I'm not turned off of playing it. I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm open to playing this. And then obviously they put a lot of fucking detail and effort into the shit that I think actually mattered. Just the impact of hits and like the sound effects and the animations are so fucking tight and so good, that the game ends up feeling fucking amazing, even though it doesn't look super impressive, like in terms of just the environments and like a lot of the character designs. Like a lot of the enemies look really just dumb and ugly. Every character that's not Jean or Azel, I think is his name, just looks kind of bland, right? And not very memorable. Even Jean is like even Jean and Azel are not that memorable, right? Like comparing them to like Bayonetta, Dante, fucking Ryu from Ninja Gaiden. I think Gaiden definitely is an example for it's very kinesthetically satisfying, but it's visually unimpressive, right? So what is the point I'm trying to make? Like in a lot of, like I said, video games, kind of like anime, are a very specific medium, right? They are a kinesthetic medium, whereas anime is like a visual medium. And I do think in an action game, kinesthetics and like just the front end and interacting with the game, like, is very important. I can't think of a lot of games where that stuff doesn't reach, like, at least some degree of polish where I still enjoy it. It's like, I would need, like, fucking, I don't know. And I've definitely enjoyed some janky games, right, like NieR or Deadly Premonition is an example of a game that a lot of people like, right? Or like, The Missing, right? The Missing is like a super janky fucking game. Obviously, you can make a game, depending on like what it's doing, that's not super kinesthetically satisfying. I'm gonna talk about that more as well. Also, if you're wondering, kinesthetics, like what the fuck does that mean? It's a term that I think Chris Franklin came up with. Like, obviously it's it's a portmanteau of aesthetics and kinetics, I guess. Wait, let me fucking Google that. Kinetics. Kinetic Bewegung. Yeah, kinetics. The study of motion and its causes, yeah. So it's a combination of that and aesthetics, right? Watch this video on it if you need a deeper breakdown, but I think the meaning of it is pretty obvious, right? You want just like the physical sense of like movement and interacting with the game to be satisfying, right? That's what we're talking about. And like, it can be a lot of little things. It can be animations, it can be sound effects, it can just be the way objects interact with each other. It can even be input lag, just like button layout, a lot of little things. The fact, for example, that a Metroid Prime, that to fire, I hammer this fucking big ass A button, to me that's also kinesthetics in a way. It's complex but also straightforward as a subject, I think, in a really interesting way. In video games, I think that shit adds a fucking lot. I don't think every game, again, to be great, needs to have perfect kinesthetics, but I do think that it's a huge deal. Now, visuals specifically, obviously part of that, right? Like art style, art direction, blah. I think about a game like like, I don't know. Yeah, like when you fucking when you pop someone's head off in Resident Evil 4 and you just have this huge explosion of blood, obviously that's visual design, that's sound design, that is aesthetics, and it's also kinesthetics. And like, it wouldn't feel as good if the game didn't look the way it did, right? So yeah, I can't say it doesn't add to the game or that it's not important, but then I guess you could imagine, what would this game feel like if it didn't have all that shit? And if it were just polygons, right? Just blank polygons. Just like still readable enough that you can play the game. But basically has no graphics, right? Obviously it would still be a fun game, right? It would still be a very fun game. Because you just make interesting choices and like you have interesting skill checks constantly in Resident Evil 4. But like, yeah, and like, controls are also part of kinesthetics, right? Yeah, that's the thing. Are controls related to visuals? Kind of, because animations dictate controls in a way, right? I guess you could have, for example, let's compare like Demon's Souls original with the Demon's Souls remake, where the animations in the remake, they look kind of off to me a little bit. Maybe I just haven't analyzed it enough, right? I think I really just need to wait for the game to come out before I can make a, fucking solid judgment on that. But, like, let's assume gameplay-wise, just all the frame data is the exact same, but the animations are, like, slightly less satisfying. Obviously, that has impact on my enjoyment of the game. So yeah, I think I'm not in that camp, right, where I just want every game to be frame data and I just want to turn everything off and, like, not give a shit about anything. I do think that is reductive, right? I do think, again, like I said, visual medium, kinesthetic medium, just adding all that shit definitely raises the experience, right? I think that's undeniable. Like, even just comparing, I made that comparison in my remix video, right? Between Crash Team Racing Original and the remake, and just how much more fucking satisfying the driving mechanics are because of the way they updated the visuals and just the feel of it. Like, everything just feels bouncier and heavier and just cooler. And, like, I would still play the original, right? I think that's a great game, but, yeah, like, I can't lie, that is a huge upgrade. That is a huge deal. So what the fuck am I trying to say? I've been focusing a lot on the idea of kinesthetics, right? Just how things feel to play, how it impacts just your visceral kind of sense of playing. But I do think, just from the way we talk about games and the way we get interested in games, there is definitely a problem where A, we look purely at visuals, and then B, we do that in a way where we don't even care about how it affects, like, the overall playing experience, right? Like, a game just needs to look visually pleasing for a lot of people, I think. Whereas, I guess, for me, it really primarily matters, okay, how does it impact the feel of the game, right? I just want the game to feel good to play, and obviously even that, yeah, like, even that is not the be-all, end-all, right? Like, I've played a lot of games that feel sort of, on first blush, really great to play. Just, like, very kinesthetic, satisfying. But then they just didn't really have depth or, like, detailed design or whatever to fucking carry them the whole way. Metal Gear Rising is the perfect example, right? Metal Gear Rising has all that shit, but it's a pretty shallow, fucking, kind of clunky-ass game. So it's not really carried beyond the first playthrough for me. Like, the kinesthetics don't amount to a great game in that instance. Even that, like, even just going beyond visuals, right? We're going into, like, feel and just, like, how it fucking feels to press buttons. Even that only does so much for me. For me to consider a game great, it really needs that spark, that, like, really detailed design, really deep combat, whatever, something like that. And that's something that visuals or kinesthetics, whatever, will not. They can enhance that, but they, at least for me, right, they can't make up for the lack of it. And that's why I get kind of annoyed when we see just another fucking indie Chrono Trigger clone. Just every other week, it feels like. The last one that I remember was, like, Sea of Stars, right? Where it was announced, gifts really well, that game, and people were just really hype on it. It's like, I don't really see, like, an interesting gameplay concept at all. People are hype on it because of the vibe that the game has, right? And again, everyone has their own priorities, right? I can't say, oh, just fucking look for the exact thing that I look for in games. I don't want to do that. Like, that kind of shit is going to happen. It's gonna keep happening where, people are gonna say, oh, this game looks fucking amazing, and, like, get super hype on it, purely based on the visuals. And also, they're gonna shit on games purely based on the visuals, because it's just super important to them, right? And as much as that, again, kind of frustrates me, blah, I just have to accept it, right? See, my good buddy Alan was making this point, yeah, isn't getting hype because a game has launchers or something, like you can launch an enemy into the air, isn't getting hype over that just as shallow as getting hype over visuals? And, again, it kind of just depends on what you care about. I mean, this phrasing is, like, super reductive, right? Like, I don't fucking pog because a game has launchers. See, Final Fantasy XVI, perfect example. I pog because it has launchers and enemy step and, like, projectile attacks with really fucking juicy looking impact. I get hype over all that, also knowing that it's the Devil May Cry 5 combat director working on that game. That's why I get hype. I think saying, oh, fucking everyone's, like, people do that. People do pog over just the presence of, like, surface level mechanics or whatever. And that's, I mean, that can backfire, right? Like, fucking Astral Chain and NieR Automata and probably, I mean, Babylon's Fall, right, has all this shit, and I'm just not interested because just the track record has not been good so far. I think this specific example is just interesting because obviously with someone who's gonna get hyped on a game over that, I don't feel the inclination to start a war in their mentions as much as with someone who, like, reduces the game entirely to its visuals, right? To me, that kind of is more shallow, right? Because, yeah, like, that's the thing, man. I think maybe this is what I'm getting at, right? We need to emphasize the difference between aesthetics and kinesthetics more. Because obviously, I feel like kinesthetics are a way more sensible thing to, like, focus on in games than just purely visuals, right? Fucking any, like, most mediums, it's a stupid phrasing, right? But, like, a lot of different mediums have visual components. So to me, basing discussion on a game so fucking thoroughly on visuals, to me will always be reductive, right? That's just how I feel. I know, again, I acknowledge that for a lot of people, it's just, like, this thing they can't get over. I explained, for example, Bayonetta, like, I mean, Final Fantasy XVI, right? Already good example because, like, I already said, yeah, it doesn't visually appeal to me that much, but I'm still excited for it. Because, like, I saw some cool shit in the gameplay, right? And just stuff that intrigued me. Just the idea that, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that a game, like, presenting no unique concept but having good visuals gets people more hype than, I don't fucking know. So this other example that I want to mention is Bayonetta. Bayonetta, believe it or not my favorite looking game, right? I do think it has great art design, I do think the game looks great. But it's not, like, my favorite fucking art style that I would gravitate toward. It's my favorite game because of all these other things. Because it's, like, very, again, kinesthetically satisfying, and then also, it's just the best fucking combat system in a game ever. Facts, don't at me. I think that just illustrates my perspective difference. Fuck. Another good example was, like, Transformers Devastation. I know a lot of people sort of in my friend group couldn't get hype on it when it was announced because they just didn't like the way it looked. Because I was like, dude, fucking crashing your car into fucking dudes, that sounds awesome. That looks like it feels really cool to play. I want to play that. I think we all just have very unique ways of looking at games, right? That's the kind of shit that excites me, right? Just seeing a unique concept, idea, feel for a game, and wanting to experience that. I remember I used to, as a kid, I used to really obsess over, like, just, like, a character being able to do things, right? That was always the thing that, like, got me the most hyped on games when I was, like, really young. Just knowing that in DMC3, I can, like, knock down an enemy, and then jump on them, and then fucking surf on them, right? Just knowing that was possible was like, oh my god, this is the fucking greatest game ever. I mentioned on the stream that I mentioned last night. No, the stream was last night, and I mentioned it in this podcast. That's what I mean. Wow, I just called this podcast. Oh my god, this is a little disgusting. I mentioned, for example, fuck man, Metroid Other M, kind of a dumb game, but just the way it feels to fucking blast dudes in that game and like dodge attacks, that sold me on it. That made me want to play it. Simple as that. And like, to me, that's video games, you know? That is video games. That is the unique thing about video games. And that's why, yeah, I feel like aesthetics cool, but I think we need to talk more about how they impact the play experience specifically, rather than, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but yeah, we need to talk more about that specifically than, oh, this game just looks really good, I guess. It's really pretty to look at. I think you definitely see this kind of thing more with people who don't play games more than once, right? They just want kind of a cool experience and then just, you know, move on from it. Whereas I think I'm just the kind of player, and again, repeating myself, for me, that shit just fades into the background so quickly. Maximilian on YouTube, he always says this, like, graphics, you just forget about the graphics. You don't see the graphics after an hour. Now, one angle, before I end this video, I want to illuminate is that, obviously there's a bunch of games that look fucking amazing, and, where that is, like, a huge selling point for me as well. I mean, Shadow of the Colossus is the example that I get hung up on, because obviously, I hate the remake, right? But the real main difference between the remake and the original is that, it just looks different, right? I just hate the way the remake looks. So if Ziad, if visuals don't matter, why do you hate the Shadow of Colossus remake so much? And it's like, I can't explain it. See, obviously, I never meant to insinuate that visuals, that's the thing. I think looking at visuals as like a requirement, or looking at visuals, or like great visuals as a requirement for a great game, that's the thing I'm like super against, right? And that's why, again, like, that's why the whole rhetoric of, oh, well, Square can afford to make their game look great, like, that's why that whole thing annoys me so much as well. Because it's like, maybe their priorities were just somewhere else, you know? You have to compromise somewhere. Like, clearly, like, good game overall is out in a reasonable time frame, also looks amazing. You probably can't do all three of those things, right? Yeah. Anyway. Shadow of the Colossus specifically, it just hits that sweet spot where it is a very experiential game, right? Where the atmosphere of the world and like just the way the creatures look and the way that pulls you into the experience is the whole point. I mean, in Shadow of the Colossus, in the remake, there's a lot of subtle things that are really wrong with it, you know? Like, just the animations and Wander's facial expressions and a lot of the effects on screen. Like, obviously that also, again, is kind of kinesthetics, and kinesthetics is the game. I think it's also important to highlight that Fumito Ueda is an animator. He did most of the animations himself on a lot of those games, on Shadow and Ico. Like, all the animations were done by hand, and then seeing it just shittily motion captured in the remake is just... that's the thing, when my character's face looks super fucking goofy, obviously I'm not gonna feel that emotion, you know, that I'm supposed to feel right now. And, yeah. That's the thing, like, every game just has different requirements and different things it's aiming for, and, based on that, you just need to prioritize what's most important, I think. I'm trying to think of more examples. I don't know. We've been going an hour, so it's pretty good already. Yeah, I hope I got my point across anyway, right? Like, just why does why does the discourse frustrate me so much? B, why do I sort of look at it a certain way? I think, yeah, like, I'm just the kind of, like, when I just talk to people, I talk to people about Mario 64 and just, like, the kinds of games that I like. I feel like it just doesn't come across, right? Like, if you don't play a lot of my favorite games like that, you're not really gonna get it. And I think a lot of people that I talk to, they just don't look specifically for those things in games, and that's why they care way more about good visuals. And while I do think that's fair, I respect it, whatever, it does make me a little bit sad, right? I do wish our priorities overall were a little bit different, you know? And also, it's important to say, just saying something looks bland or brown or drab or whatever, I think is not helpful either. I think that stuff deserves to be analyzed more, especially like considering that just people pour hundreds and thousands of fucking hours into this shit. Yeah. Respect developers, respect games. Thank you.